So now that we've gone through the course, um, there are a few assignments, which we can try and do. So this listed over here are some of the assignments that we can that you should be able to do. Uh, so the first one is basically creating a Pareto chart to analyze the sales, and the second one is how to maintain the percentage of total while filtering. The third one is about data blending. We will try doing an example of data blending, and then the fourth is how to maintain the top filter while filtering, and also the fifth one is the use of parameter as a filter. So let's look at each of this uh, and try to solve them. So let's take the first one, which is creating a Pareto chart to analyze the sales of the company. So we're back to our Tableau desktop. So what are we trying to do is trying to create a Pareto. So we would generally create a Pareto to see to look at the 80-20 rule, which is basically what it means is if just to check if 80% of my profit is coming from 20% of my customers. So that's how it generally is. It is in the industry. So and you would want it to be. I mean, you might want to check how is it actually in your data or in your business. So what let's do is uh, let's try and build the Pareto. For that, let's drag this customer names onto the column, right? And then let's grab this measure, the profit measure, and then bring it to the rows. Okay, so in this view now you have all the profit information. I mean, profit information of all the different customers. Okay, across different years and whatever regions and things. So overall profit which each customer has given us over the years. So now let me sort this profit from ascending to descending. So now you see that we have profits that's from ascending, and it goes on decreasing, descending, and then it goes to some negative numbers, which means um, these are the customers who have actually given us a lot of loss in terms of the overall scenario, right? So okay, that's good. So this is a pretty long bar chart. So now what we can do is just go over here and then change the view to normal view, entire view, right? From normal to entire view. So now what you're doing is basically bringing in all this information within your Tableau's view. Uh, you don't without the scroll bars. So you might not be seeing all the customer names over here, but then all the customer information is plotted on this graph, and then you see this thing nicely short trending. So like you see this from highest profit, it's arranged in descending, and then finally you go on to the losses, right? So now what are we trying to do? So we're trying to plot this profit, and then we're going to see how is this profit across my percentage of customers, total number of customers. Okay, so let me now bring in again same. I mean, I can control and click on this and then create another duplicate field column, duplicate field on the row. Okay, so I have this profit twice now coming up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to convert this one into the sum of I mean the profit, which means I'm going to try to change it into a running total. Okay, so running total is nothing but it's going to add up the profits. So right from the first customer onwards, all the profits are going to be adding up, and then it goes on all the way up here. And then since we have these loss-making customers at the end, you see this curve coming down. So this is a pretty simple curve, which is actually based on the profits that we have by customers. Okay, so let me just change this now. Graph uh, type, the mark type from automatic to line. All right, and then I'm gonna keep this as a bar. Okay, so now I have this multiple measures on this row. One which is a bar chart, and the other one is a line chart, and the other one, the second one, is basically the running total, running sum of the profit, right? The first one is the profit itself. So now let me go and change this to uh, dual axis. Right, there you go. So now you have this running. Now we have this profit here, and we have this running sum of the running total of the profit here. Okay. Okay, so now this does look like a Pareto chart, but then it doesn't really give me the information that I'm looking for. And also here underneath we have the number of, I mean, we don't have the number of customers or the percentage of customers, but what we have is basically the names of the customers. So we would want the view to be slightly changed so that we can actually look at the percent. Okay, so first of all, let me go here and create this. Go to edit table calculations. Okay, and then perform and actually this has to be running across the customer name, running along the customer name, right? And then you create a perform secondary. I mean, we can perform a secondary calculation on the results. Now we have the running total, but we want to see the percentage of sum of total, right? So what you're gonna do is gonna perform a secondary calculation on the result, and we're gonna say percent of total. Okay, so now again select customer name here, summarize these values from customer name. Okay, so now we have created secondary calculation on our sum of running sum of profit. Say okay. So now what you would see, the notice the change here is that now it's showing us the percentage of the sum of total. This is a percentage of the running total, right? So we want to see if 80% of my profit is given to me by my 20% of my customers. So to do that, what we did is created a. So let me just go back again and show it to you. So what we did, we went to this running total, which itself is a quick table calculation. So I went there and then we just did an edit table calculation. So once we do this, now you see that the if the secondary perform a secondary calculation on the result is selected as checked. So that's what we did earlier when we came in here, and then now we created the secondary type of calculation, which is basically the percent of total. So here on the top we're calculating the running total, and on the secondary we're checking the percentage of the running sum of the running total, right? Okay, so now and this both these are calculated along the customer name. See, okay, so now you see this here. Now we are a step closer. So now instead of showing the names of the customers here, I would like to see the percentage of these customers. So what should I do to achieve that? So let's go and create a new calculated field, and let's call this percentage of total customers, right? Customers, yeah. Okay, so then we're gonna do this index by size. So remember, these are all table calculations, and this window calculations, window sum we had looked at earlier, window size and sum and index and all those things. So we're gonna use this calculation, which is index by size, and then use that in our. Okay, so now I'm gonna grab this and then put it over here. So the view is gonna change now. But don't worry, we're gonna make it fine. So now let's grab this, move, select on this all marks, right, and then grab this customer name and then drag it onto the details. Right now you just see this one simple single something that looks like a bar chart. That's because of the percent of customer total table calculation. It's not it's not being computed using the right column that we want. So just go here, click on this one and say compute using, and then say customer name. Right, so now here you would be seeing that we are now observing that there is a percentage of total. The value is coming over here, and then also you see the percentage of total shown up here, but you don't realize that it is a percentage of total because percentage of total for customers, because it's not in the percent formatted in the right way. So you can just go and then format it, just change it to percentage, right? So now you see it's a percent of total, okay, of percentage of the total customers that we have, and what we have over here is a percentage of total running profit, right? And then here what we have here is the profit. So this bar chart is profit itself, and this line over here is the sum of running total, and this axis over here gives us the percentage of total customers that we have. So just let's see where does it intercept. So where the intercept is basically here at 5% of customers are giving me 35% of profit, right? But let's look at the 20% of 80% of profit. Where does the 80% of profit come? So 80% of profit is somewhere over here, which is basically given to me by 20% of. So 20% of my customers are giving me 83%, or rather 84% of profit. So which is kind of what the Pareto analysis generally tells you, that the 80-20 rule, the 80% of your profit comes from the 20% of your customers. So this is how you would actually go ahead and build a Pareto chart in Tableau. So let's so this has been simple. So let's just go through the steps once again. What we did is we dragged the customer name onto the columns, and then we dragged the sales onto the profit onto the rows, and then we duplicated that and then created another column here, another row, another field on the row here, and then changed that, uh, and then added this quick table calculation, which is actually the running total, and then we got this curve, and then we changed it to a dual axis, uh, and then we performed the uh, secondary table calculation here, which is actually the percent of total, and that's when we got this percentage over here. And then we created a new calculator field called index by size, which is a formula index by size, which is called the percent of total customers. So what this is essentially doing is basically it's finding out the index of each of these customers and dividing it by the total size. So it puts it into this place here, and then we drag this column, the field, and then put that over here in the columns, and then we move the customer name back into um, the details marks card of the all marks, right? So once we did that, now we find and we just went ahead and formatted this to show the percentage basically. So once we did that, we have a Pareto ready, and it is telling us that 80% of your profit, 20% of your customers are actually giving you 84% of your profit. Okay. Let's now look at the second question in the assignment, which means how do we try and maintain the percentage of total as the same when we are even when we are filtering. Okay, so let's go back to the Tableau desktop. So what does it exactly mean? So let me just give you an example of what we're trying to say here. So we have this show me. Uh, Click on the region and then select this sales. Let's create a pie chart over here, right? Okay, so I'm just gonna say I'm gonna drag the sales and put that into the label. Okay, so I'll make it a little bigger. Okay, so now once I do this, I'll just go to the label here, and then I'm gonna convert that into percent of total. Right, so now I have a percent of total, which means each of these regions. So central is giving me 31% sales, east is giving me 22.91% sale, and south is giving me 21.12, and west is giving me 24.47. Right, well, that's nice. So what if I want to just filter on the region? Okay, so let's see this. Let me say that I just don't want to see the central here. No, so I just want to see east, south, and west. So, okay, did you see something? Did you notice that the percentage is changed? So if I select central again, you see that the percentages, most of the percentages are in 20s, and one is in 31, which is actually the central. So if I remove that, you see everything goes to 30. So what it's trying to do is it's trying to make the total as 100%, right? So if I remove east as well, it's going to make 53 and 46. And then if I remove south as well, so it's showing me just the west, and it's showing 100%, which is probably not right, right? I mean, probably I don't want to see it this way. So what I want to see is, irrespective of what I select, I want the percentages to remain the same. For example, here the 31.51, I want it to remain same even if I remove the west. So now just keep an eye on this one. So if I remove this, it changes to 41.71. That's not what I want, right? So how do we achieve it? So for that, we need to create again a table calculation. So how do we do it? So let's create a new calculated field. Let's go to analysis, create calculate field. So let's create a calculated field, which is, let's call it region for filter, right? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna use a table calculation called lookup. Just lookup. Okay. Then I'm gonna use this min of region, comma 0. Yeah, calculation is valid. Okay, so what this is doing. So let's look at what lookup does. Okay, or else we'll come back to this later. So let's just go on. So now what we've done is we've just created a calculated field called region for filter. So let's replace the region filter with this new column. See how? So you're seeing these values. You're seeing the same values which is given for the region. So say OK. Right, and then I'm going to say show group filter. So you're going to see this filter. Yep. So now let me just go and filter it. So did you? Okay, let's keep an eye on this central, which is 31.51. So I'm going to remove the west. The central, it still remains 31.51. Right. So irrespective of what I choose or what I remove, so for example, let's still keep this central, which is 31.51, and remove everything else. Even if it is showing a one big circle, um, it's not showing 100%, it's actually showing the real actual percentage, which is 31.51. So this is what maintaining the percentage while filtering means, and this is how you achieve it. So what we basically did was we created a calculated field called region for filter, where we were using lookup, So what we're doing is again look up a min of region. So basically this we need to pass an aggregation into the lookup as the first parameter into this first argument. So it takes that, and then it finds out that particular value in that particular place in that position, and then give us the value. So in this case, it is going to give us the same value as it is available in the region column or region dimension. But what happens is when we're using this in the filter, right? Um, generally the way filters apply is actually filter gets applied first, and then everything else get applied on that. So whatever I mean, so the table calculations works the other way around. The table calculations, you will see that after everything, table calculator calculations get applied at the end of. So since the table calculation is the last thing that's applied on the view, um, it helps us to do this. Okay, so let me just uh, say what we did. So we wanted um, the percentage of total to be remaining same when we filter when you use this filter. So if you use the regular filter, the dimension as a filter, it was not doing it because it was calculating. It calculates the sum, and then as and when you filter, it again recalculates based on whatever is available on the in the view, and then assigns the percentage. So that is why it was assigning, trying to make add it up and make it 100%. If you remove one of the regions, it would consider all of the sales, some of the sales of, I mean some, but some not, some in the sense the adding up of all the sales of the remaining regions in the view, and then it would divide it by 3 or 2, so whatever, and then come up with the percentage. But when we, instead of that, what we did was created a new calculated field and then used that to do the filter. So this calculator field is nothing but, you use a lookup, and then pass the region as an argument, and minimum of region as argument, and then 0, which means from where it has to pick the value. So based on that, it picks the same values as in region, a region dimension. But then when we're using this on the filter shelf, this doesn't this the table calculation gets applied at the end. So it doesn't really recalculate the percentages, so it maintains the same percentage while we even when we filter. Okay, so now let's look at the next. So the third one is data blending, and show an example of data blending. So let's look at data blending. Let's go back to the Tableau desktop. Okay, so what is data blending? So data blending is when actually you have multiple data sources. So generally, you would have multiple data sources coming in from different databases. So that's when actually you would go for blending. So join, and it's different from join, because join you could do only when you are dealing with data sources that are coming in from the same database. So that's when you can define those joins when you're connecting to it. So basically, now once you have databases, I mean data sources coming in from different databases, you would actually bring them together inside a Tableau, and then you can do the blending. Okay, so blending in when you're doing a blending, generally you have a primary data source, which will be the primary data source, and then you would have a secondary data source. So you will always get the aggregate information from the secondary data source. So it does not create row level join, but then it creates an aggregate, so from the secondary data source. So let's look at an example here now. So this data source that we have a lot of information of the sales, and then also we have another table which actually is giving us the return information. So whenever there's an order placed, it's not necessary that the order is completed and then nothing more happens on that. There are certain cases when when the customer might want to return the item back to you. So we have that information as well. So let's go back to that. Let's go to connect to Excel and then click on this. Uh, so this is where you would see this the returns table. So let's just double click it, and then let's go and say go to the worksheet. So this is where you see now we've brought in the other database as well, which is data table as well, which is a returns table. So let's open a new sheet here, and then let's go to this order. So let's just start by doing the order ID. I'm going to drag all these order IDs here, and then I'm going to drag the so automatically it's got connected. So I'm going to drag the status onto the text. So now you see there are many of them which are returned, and there are many which is not returned. So we basically blending this data. What we're doing here is a blend operation. So we have this primary data source, which is always denoted by this blue uh, circle and a tick mark here, and then the secondary, which is showed by using the orange circle and a tick mark. So you can also now do, if you want to just filter on the if you want to filter on the returned ones, just say okay here, and then you would see only the order IDs that have been returned. All right, so there are 572 orders that have been returned. So let's keep this, and let's see what if I want to see it not on the order ID. Instead of the order ID, I might want to look at the number of returns by particular dimension, right? So for that, what I would have to do is bring in that dimension basically, and then do the view, create the view. So I'm going to bring in um, customer segment. Okay, I'm going to remove this order ID. Okay, let me just keep it for now. I'm going to change this because I need the count, right? I mean, the number of record, the number of orders that have been returned. So I'm going to say count. So it's showing one because I'm still at the order level ID, order level. So order ID level. So I'm going to remove this from the view. Now you see, say okay. So now you see here, when everything is showing 572, whereas only the total should be 572, and it has to be, the count has to be split across these customer segments. Well, that's not happening because if you go back to the secondary source, you would see that it's not linking. The reason why it's not linked is because I removed the sorry, the order ID from the view. So it's not linking by default. So now I can just go and say, okay, why don't you go ahead and link it on the order ID? So now you see that we get the count based on the customer segment, and then let me just go and then create this totals here. So it shows me that there are 572 of the returned items. Okay, so I might want to change this view to something else. Okay, so I want to change it to something else. Trying out to these columns, right? Then I can get rid of this, the totals. Just bring the label in. So there you go. So you have a bar chart now, which is not only, so in our dashboards, we don't not only have the order information or the sales duty or the order, we also have the return information now, saying that okay, the customer corporate corporate customer segment, you have 215 returns, and then under the home office customer segment, you have 121 or 138 returns actually. So this is how we use blending to get some information that we want from another table, and generally when it is coming from a different data source or a different database altogether. Okay, so we saw what's blending. So we just understood what's blending and how do we blend. And also for blending, you would always need to have this field linked, linking field based on which it's being linked with the primary. So you always have a primary data source, and then you have a secondary data source. So you link that in the secondary data source. You go and click this link, or if you're using order ID in the view, it automatically gets linked. You saw that. If it doesn't, if you're not using it in the view, then we would have to go and click on this and link the use that as a linking field, right? And then so we saw how we can convert the dimension, which is a status, into a measure by converting it into count, and then looking at now the count of all the returns, under each customer segment. So this we achieve by doing the blending. All right. So let's now go back to the assignment. So the other one that we are going to see, the fourth one, is basically how to maintain the top filter while filtering. So this is somewhat similar to what we did earlier, right? So, but this will be handled in a slightly different way. So let's go back to the Tableau desktop. So what are we actually saying? So this is, if you go through this in through the sessions, we already have covered this. So I'm sure we have looked at this earlier, but we just as an assignment, this is something that's pretty important for you to do, because in most cases you might have run into a situation where you're trying to do a top filter, but then you see that it's not really working the way you want it to. So let's go ahead and see what I'm trying to say here. So I'll just bring out this customer product subcategory into the rows, and then I'll bring the sales. Okay. Okay. Now I want to show only the top three, right? I want to show only the top three. So I'm going to go here and say filter and show me the top three. Show me the top three product subcategories by sum of sales, right? Yep. So now it's working fine, and it's showing me the top three subcategories by sales. That's fine. So my top filter, yeah, top end filter seems to be working fine. So let me do something else now. Let me just bring in the product category here. Say okay, then show me the quick filter. Okay. So now, and I'm gonna just make it a single value drop down. Now you see the moment I selected furniture, there's only one thing that's showing up. That's tables. That's not exactly what I was expecting because I've applied a top three filter over here, and I'm expecting to see the top three uh, subcategories under furniture category, right? It doesn't happen. So if I select office supply, nothing comes up, and if I select technology, only two of them come up. So that's not exactly what I wanted. Okay. So how do we go about this, achieving this? So this is when context filters come into picture, right? Let's go and see what's context filters. So you click here, and then you would see something called add to context. Just add to context, product category, add the product category to context, and now you see I changed to furniture. I'm still seeing three, which is correct, which is what I'm expecting, which is what I was expecting earlier as well. So I have applied a top three filter on the product subcategories, and then I've applied another filter on the product categories. So it should show me the top three product subcategories by sales whenever I select a particular product category. So now I've selected furniture, so I should be seeing the top three subcategories under furniture. So it's showing me now. So let me see office supplies, it's showing me. Let me see technology, it's showing me there. Okay. So how did we achieve it? So it was achieved by creating something called a context filter. So basically, what we've done is we've created the product category filter as a context filter. Uh, so this gets applied on this. So once and then the top three is selected. So the context filter helps us in getting the top three under each of these categories. Okay. So it also context filters will also generally help us in in speeding up the performance of our dashboards. Let's now go back to our examples and look at the. Okay, okay, so what does this mean? So in using parameters filters, what we're trying to do is, let's consider we have a view, just a very simple view. Let's create something. Or let's create some view. Let's bring up the show me. Create something like this, right? Okay, this is a tree map, so we created this. I'm gonna bring this customer name as a filter. Say okay, right? And I'm gonna say show quick filter. So what happens is that when I'm using name filter on of such kind, now this generally goes in to the database and fetches. I mean, the query is fired to find to refresh the quick filters. So of course, you would generally not use such a long a dimension with such a long list of members as filters. But then I'm just using this as an example. So you can be using something like this as a filter, and then whenever the view is loaded, the quick filter will have to be refreshed by running a query. So firing a query. So what might happen is, sometimes this might actually slow down your performance of the dashboards. Consider that you have a similar 10 to 15 of, or at least three or five or six of filters of this kind, quick filters of this kind in a dashboard, and it's going whenever it's loading. There's a possibility that each quick filter might take a little bit of time to really refresh and come up with the list of values, right? So one alternative that you can use is parameters. Again, parameters, you can only use them if you know that it's not going to change often. The members in the dimension is not going to change often. So you can use parameter as a filter. And also another limitation, you may call it, of parameter is that you do not have multi-select in that. So consider a scenario where I would have wanted a single value drop down customer name, yeah, as a filter. So I can just use this and then see the view based on what customer I'm using. Okay, so this is an example. So now what I can do is, in this, such a scenario, if I want to use parameter as a filter, I can just go here, say right click and say create parameter, right? So it is creating a parameter with all the values. Okay, right? And say okay. Let me say okay. And now you see that parameter has come up here, and I'm going to say show parameter control. So now it's Aaron Bergen has been selected. Okay, now let me remove this filter and let me remove this filter as well. So nothing's working, so I'm just changing here. No, nothing's working. Why not? Yes, it's not working because I have not done anything to actually make it work. What all I've done is created a parameter, and then I've just used the show parameter control to expose that parameter to the user. So let me just now bring in this customer name filter into the filter shelf. Now, instead of using any of this, I'll say use all, and I'm going to condition. And I'll go to this section over here which says by formula. So click on that, will do customer name parameter. Okay, say OK, say OK. Now you see it is working. Now it's changing. Now it's working like a filter. So now my parameter is now working like a filter for me, right? So basically, there are certain scenarios when you would want to use this, and certain scenarios when you wouldn't want to use this. So this scenarios when you would want to use a parameter as a filter is when you have a single value drop down filter that you have, uh, and you know that it's probably not going to change all that often. Then you can use this technology. You use this technique actually to speed up your performance of the dashboard, because a parameter is basically a static list of values, right? So it doesn't really go back to the database to fetch these values and refresh the quick filter. So we're not using quick filters here at all. We're just using parameters, and then using the parameter value in the filter here, and then applying the filters on the view. So this is a nice way of using a parameter to improve the performance sometimes of your dashboard, if this technique um, helps and also suits your requirement, right? So what we did is basically created a parameter out of one of these columns. So in this case, we had selected customer name. Just say we create parameter. It creates a parameter and then expose the parameter by using this show parameter control, and then drag the customer name into the filter shelf, and then in the back in the conditions tab, you just go and just say from by formula, and just give the formula which says customer name, which is the value, which is dimension from the database, equal to customer name parameter, right? Whatever value that gets selected here in the parameter is gets assigned to this one, and the filter gets applied only for only to show this particular customer that's been selected in the parameter. right? Yeah. Okay. So we looked at how to create a parity chart, how to maintain the percentage of total whilst filtering, and we also saw what's data blending and how look at an example of data blending where we were looking at the orders and the returns database, I mean tables, and then we were blending it inside Tableau to come up with a view. And we also saw how to maintain the top filter using the context filters, and also the last one what we saw was how to use parameter as a filter, um, so you can use that in certain scenarios and speed up your performance of the dashboard. Let's look at another scenario, which is basically looking into the what if kind of a scenario. So for example, if you consider that you have a particular value, um, a measure, a profit or something that's dependent on you want to calculate the net profit dependent on your tax rates. So how do you calculate it? And what if the tax rates keep changing? So how do you want to? So I just want to see what would be my profit if the tax rate is this much, or if the tax rate is changes to 10 no percent, and what's it gonna be, and that kind of a scenario, right? So how do we do it? So let's go back to Tableau desktop. So here, so the way we would do it is basically using parameters again. So let me just drag the customer segment over here and then drag the profit. Okay, so now we have this profit, and let me just bring the yeah. So now you have this profit which is plotted against each of these customer segments. So let me see that. So this is my profit. This is my gross profit. So what about the net profit? So I might have some tax rates or tax that needs to be deducted. Before I really say okay, this is my net profit. So I'm gonna create a calculated field here, right? So I'm gonna say net profit. Okay. So what would be the calculation here? So I have a profit, and I'm gonna deduct 10% of that as, or any percent, and that's a percentage basically. So I'm gonna say okay into I have to create a parameter because I do not already have a parameter here which defines the tax rates. So so Tableau provides us the feature of creating a parameter from this window as well. So I'm gonna use that. Say okay, call it tax rate, and then I'm going to keep it float. Then I'm going to say all. So we've seen how list works and what the range is, and I'm going to keep it all, which means I'm going to get a type in basically the a place where I can enter the values, right? Okay. So we'll say okay now. The tax rate comes up here, so I'm going to just double click that and then say, and actually I'm going to just divide by 100, so that okay. So this is how I would calculate my net profit. So I've got my profit, it's my gross profit, and then I'm gonna deduct the 10%. I mean, this is just a calculation, for example, for our illustration. So I'm just using this profit over here, and then how I can use the parameter to create this a tax rate kind of a parameter, and then give different values to it, and then find out how my net profit varies, right? Okay, so now I have a profit over here. So let me just drag this net profit also and then plot it here. So now you see net profit and the regular profit both are same. Just show the parameter control. And the reason being, I am saying that my tax rate is basically zero, which certainly wouldn't be the case anywhere, most of the places at least. So now let me just say, okay, my tax rate is going to be 10%. So now you see that my net profit remains the profit remains the same because I've not done any calculation on that. The calculation that's being done is on the new calculated field, which is the net profit. So what if my tax rate is 10%? The profit is going to come down from 599,000 to 539,000, right? So I can see what if it increases by 0.25%. it's very marginal decrease in my profit. So basically, this is in a scenario where you have some variable that keeps changing, and then you want to see based on that variable, how is my profit or sales or whatever is now, how does it change. So this could be anything, this could be a tax rate, this could be a discount. So do you want to so if somebody wants to set what discount they should be keeping so that their profitability is maintained, they could use something of this kind of a parameter and then keep changing the values. So let's see what if. Okay, so now let's come back to tax rate. So let's see what happens if my tax rate is at 40%. So my net profit certainly comes down a lot based on this the tax rate, because the tax is high, so my profit is coming down. So this would actually this is a way by which by using parameters you can create this kind of interactive what if scenarios, and you can handle those uh, and then so this is basically you're providing the users who put in some values and then find out what happens on your view based on what value has been entered, right? So that's a kind of a customer input that's been taken, or a user input that's been taken into our dashboards or reports, and then change the view based on what value is entered. So this is in a way similar to um, creation of interactive reports. So this is one way you can create another interaction in your dashboards. So what we basically did is, we have one measure. So we took that measure, we created a calculated field. This is basically what we did. Edit calculated fields, and then we created something called net profit. Let me just edit it. Yeah, so there you go. So I used the profit, and then I created a calculation where I'm subtracting the tax from my profit and then deducting it from my profit. Okay, and then I'm just plotting it over here just to see how my profit changes, if net profit changes, if there is a change in the tax rate. So it could be something like you would have calculated your net profit based on a particular tax rate of like 12%, and then tomorrow it's going to change, and then the profit that you're going to get from the now on is going to be taxed 12%. Instead of 12%, it's going to be 15%. So then you can be sure of what's your profit going to be, so that you don't miscalculate it by using the old tax rates, right? So this is in a way one way of handling some scenarios of this kind.